Getting all around my room, my world's so bright, it's hard to breathe, but that's alright. Hush.
What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another video here on the World of Juice channel. I've got something that I have been cooking up for a hot minute now, and I think it's finally time to re-debut it to the world. And I say re-debut specifically because this type of video and this type of what could end up becoming a series has already appeared on the channel before. Back when the channel was beginning, like when it was in its youthful days. So, if you're not familiar, all the way back in COVID time, 2020, and into 2021, and then into 2022, it was a 3-year, ongoing thing that I was doing. I would stop it here and then I would pick it back up a year later and I would do it again. Like it was one of those things where I was just like, it was the beginning of the channel, and I had started the channel a year prior in 2019, and actually I had started the channel in 2018, not this channel. It's a whole thing. But I had started this series and I really enjoyed it, and I got through a year, and then I just kind of like stopped doing it because it was kind of hard to keep up with it, with like creating all the players and stuff. And then I picked it back up again, and then I was having troubles with my PlayStation 3, and there was a lot of different things that were going in to that series not really panning out the way that I wanted it to. But if you're not familiar, I had started an NCAA 14 series with the Notre Dame Fighting Irish, originally just called a Notre Dame Dynasty, but I then turned it into the All-American Dynasty, because the whole goal and the whole premise of that series and what the structure of that was it wasn't just the normal Notre Dame team from back in the NCAA 14 game. I had taken the best players from the 2013 roster and put them on the Notre Dame team all at the same time. So you had guys like Sammy Watkins and Johnny Manziel and countless others. Jarvis Landry was on that team, and there was Odell Beckham Jr. I think was even on that team. There were so many fun players on that team, and the whole goal of that was we were going to track through the years from 2013, 2014, all the way to present day, which at that time was like 2020, 2021, all that kind of stuff. And we were going to keep adding the recruiting classes. So let's say we go to, I don't know, maybe like whatever recruiting class Chase Young was in. I'm not 100% sure what it would have been. Probably like 2017 recruiting class, maybe. You get the picture. I would have gone to like 24/7 Sports or whoever some of the respected recruiting websites are, and I would have gone through their top prospects. I would have jotted them down, who the top guys were in their respective classes, and I was going to go into, because on NCAA 14 I had all the different rosters from guys that had made the rosters from every single year and put them onto the game. So I was going to go through and I was going to take their freshman version and put them and create them in the Notre Dame file and then have them as the recruit. So it's technically we recruited them. And I was going to go through all that. So we would have recruited, I don't know, maybe Lamar Jackson, and I would have taken Lamar's freshman Louisville build from whatever roster he was a freshman on in NCAA 14, and I would have taken those stats and put him into the game as a freshman on our team as a recruit. And that's basically what I was going to do. That was the whole idea of it. And I thought that was a really, really cool idea. And so when I heard that College Football was coming back in a video game with College Football 25, I was like, well, maybe I can resurrect this, because nobody wants to see that series on NCAA 14 anymore. It's NCAA 14's old news now. So how am I going to do this? I've always wanted to bring that back and do it properly with a modern game. And then when I heard that we were going to get this game, I was like, I can maybe get this back. So when we found out that the game was coming out, I was starting to get the works going. I was trying to behind the scenes get everything sorted and all that kind of stuff. But then they released the heartbreaking statement that you won't be able to change the rosters because of NIL purposes, name, image, and likeness. And that kind of really set us back in terms of making this series possible again, because obviously you got to be able to change the prospects to have them be who they are on the team, obviously. So when we found out we weren't going to be able to make any rosters, I was like, well, how am I going to do this? I'm probably going to have to scrap this idea and just have it live on in its own world back in NCAA 14. But then I started to realize, and well, then they came out with the patch that allows you to edit the created prospects, just not, you can't touch any of the actual guys that have signed NIL deals for the game. So that opened the door slightly for this idea to be back. The only problem with that is you have to simulate, if you want to change prospects and you want to have a full team of no people that are NIL, you have to simulate at least 4 years, maybe even 5 years, considering some people stay around even longer in the game, whether they're a red shirt or they just want to stay around, whatever it may be. You have to simulate at least 4 years, probably 5 years to be safe, just to get a full team of auto-generated players from different cycles of recruiting. And so I was like, well, it's kind of annoying because we're not starting like in 2024, but it is the only way we can get this to work. So I booted up the game and I simulated 5 years into the future, checked all the rosters. Now, obviously, there are still some people that are real in around the country, around on different teams and stuff that have been like super young freshmen at the time and then had stayed around and like super seniors and like senior red shirts and stuff. So that is still a thing. It's very few and far between, but there are still some guys. But at least the team that I chose is fully auto-generated. Well, they were fully auto-generated before I got my hands on them. So that is kind of the history of the origins of this series and my thought process in trying to bring it back for this modern game. Now, I am going to be tweaking some of the core aspects of that series because I feel like I want to keep that series as its own thing and make this an offshoot of that, but still has its roots tied to it, if you know what I mean. And I have to do it this way because you can't change auto-generated player faces, which is a big problem because of the AI image generator that the game uses to create the auto-generated prospects. You can't change their appearance. You can only change their height and their weight. You can't change what their face looks like, which is a big issue when you're trying to create certain real-life players, because obviously we all know what these players look like. So we want to get them to look as close as you can to it. But unfortunately, with the way that they have the game made and the prospects made, you can't do that. So you can change literally everything about them except for obviously where they're from and what they look like. But everything else you can change. So that is one of the big problems, and it's one of the things we're going to have to get around, and it's the main reason why I'm not doing it year by year. So instead of going from 2013, 2014, and then taking the 2015 recruiting class, and then 2016 recruiting class, and so on, I'm just going to be taking players from different periods of history and merging them together on one roster. And that's what I've done on this initial roster, and that's what we will be doing as we recruit players and go on in the series. So I've started with a team. I have tried to match the players that the auto recruiting, because I had it on auto recruiting for the 5 years I simulated, so I wouldn't have any effect on the team or anything. I had to try and match the faces that the recruiters had, or the recruited players had, to as close as possible, I guess, to real life players. And that's the kind of juggling act and kind of like balancing act we have to try and do with this type of series. You have to try to match a player in the game to a player in real life as close as you can, so it still seems a little bit realistic. It doesn't break the immersion as much. So that is kind of tricky. That's the trickiest part about doing this series. But I really wanted to do it again, and this is the only way we can. So it was a little bit tricky to do it. I hope it doesn't break your guys' immersion. It's just going to be taking some getting used to, because obviously we know what these players look like in our heads, and we can Google them and what they look like. So it's not going to be a 1-to-1 match, but it was never going to be a 1-to-1 match. It's not even a 1-to-1 match on NCAA 14 when you can fully customize what those players look like. So it was never going to be a 1-to-1 match in the first place. But if you can match them as close as possible, and that's why recruiting is going to be a very integral part of a series like this, because if we have a certain prospect in mind, let's say we want to recruit, I don't know, who do we want to recruit? DeAndre Hopkins or Fred Warner. I'm just naming top players in the league. Yeah, DeAndre Hopkins is not really a top player in the league anymore. Just name your top. Derrick Henry, whoever you want to name. Aaron Rodgers, Tom Brady, whatever player in history you want to name. We have to try to pick a prospect that resembles them somewhat, so you can believe it, so it's believable. And so that's why recruiting is going to be very, very important, because we're not going to be just going for 5-star players, because obviously their ratings don't matter, because we're going to be changing them to ratings that would match the player that we're recruiting. So the ratings have no business in a recruiting process like this. Basically, we have to look at the face. And whatever the face looks like, that's the player that we have to match them to. So star ratings don't necessarily... Obviously, I still want to get big-time 5-star and 4-star commitments to make the team overall better in the game, and to make it easier to recruit in general. But the main thing about recruiting is we have to look at the face of the player that's been generated and see if we can match that up with a player in real life that we can reasonably say, yeah, I can get behind that. That looks in the realm of the same type of guy that we have in our mind. So we're going to recruit them. And the position really doesn't matter. If we find a good face, and let's say he's a running back, but the player that we think he looks like is a safety, that doesn't matter. We can change him to be a safety. We can change him to fit whatever we need him to fit, or an offensive lineman, or a defensive lineman, or a quarterback, or whatever the position may be that we think this player looks like. That's what we're going to be doing. So I know this has been a super long intro, but I needed to get the origin out. I needed to get the whole scope of what we're doing here in the intro before we get into what the roster looks like. Now, we're not going to be playing any games in today's episode. I just want this video to be an introduction to the world that we're going to build, the team that we're going to build, and the recruits that we are going to hopefully bring in. So that is kind of my thinking on that. Let me know down below in the comments if you guys are interested in this type of series, because I know it's kind of crazy to think I'm going to be taking real-life players that we know what they look like Lamar Jackson or Cam Newton or Drew Brees or Peyton Manning or whoever the quarterback may be, Patrick Mahomes, whoever it is. We're going to be taking those guys that we absolutely know what they look like and trying to match them to a player in College Football 25 that has an AI-generated face that's not a real thing. It's going to be tricky. I understand that it's a little bit of it's kind of a weird thing to try to understand. I get it. But as long as we can make it as close as possible to what they look like, I think it could be pretty good. So let's get into this. You'll understand more as we go, but I just wanted to give you that little bit of context before we got into it. So I hope you guys going to enjoy. If you do, leave it a like, subscribe to the channel, join the Juice Club. Like I said before, leave your comments down below, your thoughts, your feelings on this series. And also, if you want to be a big help, you can go and leave a comment about, I'm going to go through the recruiting class that we have right now, or at least the guys we have on the board, and let me know down below in the comments if you think a certain player looks like a real life player. That would help me out a lot, because then I'll be like, oh yeah, that's totally fine. We can make that player part of the class. It doesn't have to be a current player. It could be if you think he looks like Brett Favre, then we can we can make him look like Brett Favre, or we can make him Brett Favre. If you think he looks like Lawrence Taylor or Darrelle Revis or freaking Deacon Jones, whoever you may think he looks like, then we can leave that down below in the comments, and we can have them be that person in this series. So that's basically what we're doing. And let's go meet the roster now. If you go to enjoy, leave it a like, and yeah, let's go meet this team, because there are some players on this team. Okay, it is time. We have revealed the team. I never mentioned the team in the intro on a specific note because I wanted you to be revealed when we jumped into the actual game. It is week number 1, or when we jumped to the actual menu. It is week number 1 of 2029. Like I said in the intro, we simulated 5 years into the future to make sure that we got rid of all the NIL players so we could have a fully customizable experience. Now, you may also be wondering, Juice, how is Gonzaga in here? Well, we're playing an online Dynasty. I loaded up an online Dynasty because I wanted to have a little bit of a team builder input into this. Now, obviously, I'm not a team builder. I am the Ohio State University. They're my favorite college football team, if you're not aware. And the only way that I was going to pick the Buckeyes was if we were going to have this type of series. So that is how I got to be the Buckeyes. And not only because they're my favorite team. But we have Gonzaga in here. There are 3 team builder teams that I added to the college football scene. We have Gonzaga, who we are playing in the first game of the season. Obviously, they don't have a real life football team, but when I was looking at I also realigned the college or the conferences. So whatever the teams that are going to be moving in the future, like 2025, 2026, whatever it may be, the Pac-12 has been revived. I moved those teams into those certain conferences, which we'll take a look at in this video. But there's been 3, and the Gonzaga actually is moving, I think, is it to the Pac-12 in basketball? Or everything other than football, because obviously they don't have a football program. Whatever conference they're moving into. I added a football program from, obviously, the download center, and I brought them in because I thought that might be pretty fun. So Gonzaga has been added to the college football landscape, and both Dakota schools, so North Dakota State and South Dakota State, have been added to this team. And the teams I removed were like nothing 1-stars, like Ball State, Georgia Southern, and I think Georgia State maybe are the 3 teams that I removed. So I apologize if you're a fan of those schools. I needed to get rid of teams that really had no impact, and those 3 teams were the first ones I saw. So those are the 3 teams that we have added and removed from College Bowl 25. So I thought that'd be pretty fun. And I did schedule 2 of those teams on the first year. We've scheduled Gonzaga and North Dakota State as the first 2 teams we play. Obviously, they're coming in here to the shoe, because why would we go there? That doesn't make any sense. But then we have a pretty crazy schedule as we take on UCLA, who is obviously now a Big Ten team. We take on Alabama, which is just a straight up game, which is just insane to even have on the schedule in modern college football. Then we have a big time Big Ten schedule with Wisconsin, Illinois, Rutgers, Penn State, Minnesota, Washington, Purdue, and obviously the game. And we have to go to the Big House in that game this year. That's going to be pretty crazy. At least we don't have to go to Beaver Stadium. That would be kind of annoying. I hate going there. Oh, I hate it so much. All right, but that's the schedule for this year, and I wanted to point out these 2 teams. The other team, obviously, like I said, was South Dakota State. Here they are. The Jackrabbits have been added into, I think they're in the Sun Belt. Yeah, they're in the Sun Belt. So is North Dakota State. They're in the Sun Belt as well. I didn't really know what to do with them, so I just put them in the Sun Belt. I was going to make them independent, but I chose the Sun Belt. So here is the conference as we are. The ACC stays the same. They are, actually, no, I put UConn in the ACC, because I think they play there in basketball, right? Are they ACC in basketball? I don't remember, but I put them in the ACC. I also put Notre Dame in the ACC. There's no independent teams in college football anymore. No independent teams. So Notre Dame now becomes an ACC team. I was going to put them in the Big Ten, but I was like, realistically, if Notre Dame was going to join a conference, they'd probably join the ACC, because I'm pretty sure all of their other programs play ACC conference games, except for football, which is independent. So I just put them in the ACC. So that has the new look ACC. The American looks pretty much the same, I think. I don't think there's... UTSA, I think, is new. Maybe. I don't remember. Maybe they were always there. Big 12 looks the same as it has, with the new additions, obviously, like Cincinnati and all that kind of stuff, but they were already here. Big 10, we saw the changes that UCLA, USC, all the guys that are in here this year in real life, Oregon, all them. Conference USA, I don't think I added anybody in Conference USA. I think they're all the same. And independents, like I said, there's no independent teams anymore. The MAC got a new team, which is UMass, because actually, I think in 2026, UMass is joining the MAC, which feels kind of weird because it's the Mid-American Conference, and UMass is not mid of America, but whatever, they're joining in 2026. So they're in the MAC now. The Mountain West has UTEP, that's a new team that I added to the Mountain West. The Pac-12 has been revived, like I mentioned. No, right now it's just Oregon State and Washington State, but in a couple of years they're going to be getting Boise State, Colorado State, Fresno State, San Diego State, and Utah State, all from I think the Mountain West. So they're going to be revived in theory. So they are they're a new conference, I guess. SEC is the same. It's all the big teams that you expect. And then the Sun Belt has the additions of the Dakotas. I don't know why South Dakota State is spelled out, but NDSU is all they have. I didn't make the team, obviously, so it's just whatever they gave it. And that is the new look Sun Belt. And then obviously you got the conferences. And I made sure to put the Dakotas in the same conference so they would play each other more than likely, because obviously that's a big rivalry. So that is all the new conference shakeups that I've added to this series. I definitely wanted to get that in here. And I do want to be specific about the contracts. I did not take over this team until this 2029 season. I was specific about that. When I was simulating, I was on another team. I just retired that coach and then created All-American Juice to be the new coach of the series. So I didn't want to have a tainted record by simulating, because as you can see, when we started simulating here, the Buckeyes do really, really good in 2024. Then they fall off a cliff for some reason. I don't know why the simulation does this. And it was on auto recruiting and everything like that. I don't know why the simulation kills all the big time teams like Alabama, Georgia, Ohio State. They all kind of like fall off a cliff in simulation after a few years. But that's what we're here for. We're here to bring them back. And that's why Ohio State's a 4-star program and not a 5-star program. Because they've kind of had some back-to-back years of missing bowl games, which would be unacceptable in Columbus, Ohio, in real life. They would probably burn the program down if they had back-to-back years of. If they had a 9-win season, that's a call for firing. If they had a 7-win season, a 5-win season, a 4-win season, Columbus might not even be on the map anymore. They might burn the whole entire city off the map. If that's, and I'm not joking about that either. It would be a bad scene. It'd be like the apocalypse if the Buckeyes had a bad season like this. So we are now here, and I wanted to have a squeaky clean record. That's why I was another team when I simulated, because I wanted to have a completely fresh record when we joined the Buckeyes. So that is what the record looks like, and that is why the Buckeyes are a 4-star team. But I think it's time now to actually see what the roster looks like. I feel like I've done a lot of build-up. I've done a lot of other explaining and stuff. I think it's time to see the roster. I'm going to go into this screen, and you're going to see some names on this list. It's going to be a lot. It's going to be overwhelming. I want you to just take a breath. We'll go through it position by position. We'll talk about why I thought this player looked like the auto-generated thing, and we'll get through it. So here we go. View the roster. Yeah, I know. It's a thing. I understand. Let's take it position by position, starting with the quarterback position. Joey Harrington is going to be our starter for this season. He's a sophomore redshirt. Now, obviously, I can't change the year that they are. That's another thing you can't change about auto-generated prospects, or any prospect, really. So I just had to go with what they have, and the Buckeye quarterback at the time was a sophomore redshirt, and so that became Joey Harrington. And above me is where you'll see all their pictures, obviously. I feel like that looks a little bit like Joey Harrington. I was trying to go through like my Rolodex of quarterbacks, and I was trying to figure out who that might look like, and I came across Joey Harrington. I Googled him, and I was like, I mean, maybe you could convince me that is an auto-generated Joey Harrington. I could get behind that. Then we have Colt Brennan, who is obviously RIP, rest in peace. Colt Brennan, former Hawaii quarterback, one of the better Hawaii quarterbacks, probably the best Hawaii quarterback they've ever had. Obviously, they also had Timmy Chang, who was really, really good too for them. But Colt Brennan's probably the more famous of the two. And he is here. Now, I think he has a little bit darker hair, but I mean, he looks a little bit like him, right? Maybe I'll put up pictures of each player next to the picture on the screen and kind of get you like a side-by-side. Maybe not. I don't know. That's a little bit of editing that I might have to do. I don't know if I'll do that or not, but I think it kind of looks like Cole Brennan a little bit. Now, this one's kind of a funny one because when I saw this player's auto-generated face, I was like, there's only one quarterback that's got this kind of face, and it is Donovan McNabb. And as you can see, the player's face is like taller. It's longer than like Colt Brennan or Joey Harrington. It's a little bit of a elongated face, and there's only one quarterback in NFL history that's got that type of face. It's Donovan McNabb. So Donovan McNabb becomes a freshman at Ohio State. Now, I personally did all of these editings. I went in and I made the players. I Googled what they looked like in college, and I tried to match what kind of gear they had, what kind of helmet they had. I tried to match all that gear into the game so it's as immersive as possible. So you're going to see a lot of players with the gigantic pads because that's the type of pads they had when they played in college. So I tried to get it as immersive as possible, as close as possible. Donovan McNabb is our freshman quarterback, and a guy that I have on redshirt this year is Deshaun Kaiser. Now, it doesn't really look like Deshaun Kaiser, but that's going to be the problem with this type of series. Some of these auto-generated faces are just not going to look like anybody. So I tried to think of quarterbacks who have that type of hairstyle where it's a little bit poofy up top, and I came across Deshaun Kaiser, and I was like, I mean, I could get there. He's a little bit darker than Deshaun Kaiser is, but I mean, I didn't really have a lot of options. So I went with Deshaun Kaiser. Now, running back, we have Ryan Matthews. Yes, that looks nothing like Ryan Matthews. I understand. But it doesn't really look like anybody, like I said with Deshaun Kaiser. So I thought, you know what? He's a little bit on the tan side like Ryan Matthews has. A little bit of a tan type of skin tone. So the hairstyle obviously doesn't match. The beard doesn't match. But it doesn't really look like anybody, does it? Unless you think that it does. I can obviously change this player to make him look like somebody you think he looks like. But I don't feel like he looks like anybody really, so I picked Ryan Matthews. We have Jonathan Stewart, Oregon running back, who is here. And then they gave me a really tough choice. And I'm going to get into this when we get into the defensive side of the ball. They gave me a really, really tough choice because some of the recruits that they had on auto recruiting are white running backs. And shockingly enough, there's not a lot of white running backs in the grand scheme of football. Now, there are some white running backs, but is there any white running back that looks like that? I mean, come on. So I picked Kyle Juszczyk. He's not really a running back. He's a fullback, I understand. But, I mean, McCaffrey don't look like that. Danny Woodhead doesn't look like that. There's not really any running backs that look like that. So I was like, Juszczyk, I mean, maybe he looks like that. I don't know. And then we've got Peyton Hillis. Actually, this is one of the ones where I was like, I mean, that could look like Peyton Hillis. I Googled him, and I was like, I can see it. I can see a resemblance in the Peyton Hillis one. So I made that this running back. And like I said, we'll get into it more when we get to the defensive side of the ball, specifically the secondary. So that is our running back room. It's not like a huge name brand running back room, but maybe we'll change that as the years go on with the different recruits we bring in. The fullback is Patrick Ricard, and yes, I know his last name is spelled wrong. There's no H in his name, but when I typed it in, Ricard, for Ricard, it gave me the EA jargon that says it is an inappropriate name. I don't know how it's an inappropriate name when you literally have him in your database in Madden, but that's also the same with Hooker. So I guess that's not really a point, but I don't know. I was typing in Ricard. I didn't have any other trouble with any other name that I typed in or that I put in. The only problem I had was with Ricard, and I was like, that's really weird. So I just put an H in there to make it go through. But Patrick Ricard, yes, I know that looks nothing like Patrick Ricard. But it was a white fullback. What do you want me to do? I didn't have a choice. That's why we're going to be very strategic in who we scout or who we recruit so that we can have a choice in who we bring in instead of having, because this is just kind of what I was given. I didn't recruit these players. So that is our fullback. He's also a freshman. And here is the running back room, or the wide receiver room, which I'm very excited about because we have legendary Hall of Famer Tim Brown, who, I mean, that looks like Tim Brown a little bit. That's when I saw that, I was like, I feel like that could be Tim Brown. So I made him Tim Brown. Then we have Steve Largent. Looks nothing like Steve Largent, but it's a white receiver that maybe. Santana Moss. That you could get around the Santana Moss one. Jarvis Landry. Now, Jarvis Landry doesn't look like that necessarily. Let's go into his player card. Because this Jarvis Landry, that looks more like Jarvis Landry than what his generated face looks like. When I loaded this, I was like, ooh, I can make that Jarvis Landry. And so I did. And so that is Jarvis Landry. But when you go to his picture from here, that doesn't look like the same player, does it? So that's why it's a little bit confusing. Austin Collie, BYU wide receiver, is on the team. Ryan Broyles from Oklahoma is here as well. That one kind of looks like him. I could get around that. You could convince me that's Ryan Broyles. He's also getting redshirted this year. Jordy Nelson, Kansas State, is on the team. I know, looks nothing like him. And then Lee Evans, which I don't really know where he went to college, but I took him from Buffalo, obviously from the Bills. So that's Lee Evans. And then we got Malcolm Mitchell from Georgia, which he looks a little bit closer to Malcolm. I mean, not really. When you go in here, it's not really much different, but nobody looks like Malcolm Mitchell. He's got a certain type of face. That's not going to be auto-generated. And that guy really doesn't look like anybody. Tell me who that looks like as a wide receiver. Tell me who that looks like. So that is our wide receiver room. It's very stacked, or it's very large, but that's why we have 3 red shirts on 3 freshmen. Tight end room, we only have 2. We have Evan Ingram, which not really, and then we have David Njoku, which I could get around. That could be a generated David Njoku for sure. I could totally see that. And then Evan Ingram. That's our tight end room. Very small. Only 2 players. We have Andrews Pete at left tackle. We have Winston Justice. And we have Walker Little. All senior red shirts. So we're definitely going to have to recruit some offensive linemen this year. And I have one in mind that I think is going to be a very fun one if we're able to recruit him. But those are all our left tackles. Our left guard is Gary Zimmerman, Minnesota Viking legend. And we have Colton Miller. And I know Colton Miller is a tackle, but we had 3 senior tackles who didn't look like Colton Miller, and I had to go, let's make him a guard. We can always make him a left tackle if we need to, but for right now, he's going to be a guard. Yes, he's 6'9" as a guard. That's very weird, but he's going to be a guard. Center is Dermontti Dawson from the Steelers, very legendary type of player, Hall of Famer. Kevin Mawe, obviously everybody should be familiar with Kevin Mawe, and then Jeff Saturday. When I saw this player model, I was like, that's gotta be Jeff Saturday, and I was like, boom, we're putting it on him. So that is Jeff Saturday. Right guard is Leon Searcy, I think from the Seahawks, maybe? I don't know for sure where he played. And then we have Willie Rofe. So some big-time names here. Right tackle is Brian McKinney, which, if he was a little bit darker, that would be almost a 1-to-1 with Brian McKinney. That looks a lot like him. And then Joe Staley is here, and Luke Jokel, former 2nd overall pick, fun fact, is here. John Runyon Sr., because they gave me a guy with a mustache. What am I supposed to do with a guy with a mustache? Nobody has a mustache anymore. So I was like, what am I going to do with this? And then I Googled John Runyon Sr., and he had a goatee, and I was like, close enough. So John Runyon Sr. is here. Then we have Isaiah Wilson, obviously big-time bust in real life for the Titans. I think for the Titans. He might have played somewhere else too. But big-time bust. But really good at Georgia. And he is going to be freshman redshirt for us. So that is our offensive line. The defensive side of the ball, we only had 1 left end when I joined the team. So I made it Erasmus James. If you're not familiar with Erasmus James, look him up. Decent player. And all these guys, in theory, are All-Americans when they played at college. I'm not sure. There could be a couple guys here and there that didn't actually get an All-American, but they're like well-known players. And Erasmus James might be one of them. He might have got an All-American when he played. I don't know. But the point of the series is to get like a bunch of big-name players from over history. But Erasmus James is one of our left ends, or our only left end. And then the defensive side of the ball, we actually have a Buckeye. John Simon, who is here. He is only a junior, or he is already a junior redshirt, but I felt like that guy looked like John Simon a little bit, so I made him John Simon. We have Jadeveon Clowney, which I am a very big fan of because Jadeveon Clowney is a beast. And I tried to give, this is another thing I didn't really talk about, I tried to give each player the number that they had in college so that it would be also not breaking the immersion factor. But obviously some of the players wear the same number because they played on different teams, obviously. So you can't have everybody wear the same number. So some of them have different numbers. Jadeveon Clowney is here. Adrian Claiborne is here. He doesn't have the long hair, obviously, that Adrian Claiborne has, but, I mean, he's got long enough hair. And then Jason Pierre-Paul, JPP, has made it to the Buckeyes. So that is our defensive ends. D tackles, we have Terrence Cody from Alabama and Sean Cody, which is kind of an unknown name. You think he's from USC, played like the early to mid 2000s for USC. He was on those really good USC teams. So he is here. Chad Lavalace, I think is Lavalace. I don't know. He's from, I think LSU is where he played. But he's a senior redshirt. I had to pick somebody that wasn't going to be like super impactful because he's only going to be here for this 1 year. And I was like, Chad Lavalace, why not? He looks kind of like him. We have Kenechi Odezi, who is a stud, I think from USC as well. And he is going to be one of our D tackles. We have Stephen Paya, I think Oregon State, right? Oregon State? Is he Beaver? Maybe. Devin Still, Penn State. Big time player from the 2010s. Very good player. He's also here. That is the defensive line. The outside linebackers, we have 2 seniors, so they didn't really give me much of a choice. We have Lofa Tatupu, also I think from USC, and he, looks a little bit, kind of. And then I was racking my brain on this because you don't see guys in the NFL with huge beards anymore. And I was like, who can I make this? And then I came across DeAndre Levy, and I was like, DeAndre Levy had a huge beard. He wasn't that dark, obviously, but who else is going to have a big beard like that? So I made it DeAndre Levy. So you're just going to have to get around. He's only he's a senior redshirt. He's only going to be here for this year. So it's not going to be that bad. But you can't give me a guy with a big beard like that and expect me to figure out who that is. So I made it DeAndre Levy. And if you have really, you know what? If you have really bad eyes, if you take off your glasses, like if you wear glasses, hold on, let me get back to it. If you take off your glasses and you squint real hard and you look at him, he still doesn't look like DeAndre Levy, but you could get there. You could get there. All right. Middle linebacker, we have AJ Klein, who's a senior. It's just whatever. I know AJ Klein had a little bit longer hair, but whatever. Ben Burkervin from Washington, I think from Washington, right? Maybe. I saw this guy with a luscious, gorgeous mane, and I was like, what kind of players at linebacker had that type of hair? And I Googled it, and I was like, Ben Burkervin had that type of hair. Not that exact hair, but had long hair, and I was like, you know what? He's going to be him. He's a junior redshirt. He's not going to be here very long. Tank Carter from TCU, one of the better TCU players they've ever had, really, on defense. He is here. He has darker. This one actually looks a lot like him. It's just his Tank Carter in real life has really dark hair, or like black hair and black facial hair. So that's really the only knock on this player model. But I mean, it's pretty close. And then Brandon Spikes, obviously from Florida fame during that boom period with Urban Meyer, Tebow, all those guys. That is our final middle linebacker, stud. Then the defense. This is one that you can't really get past. Nobody really looks like that guy. So I was Googling players, and I was like, Julian Peterson, whatever. It kind of looks not really like him at all, but Julian Peterson is who he is now. Al Wilson, veteran of Tennessee in the 90s, late 90s, early 2000s. He is here at outside linebacker. Paul Posluszny, one of my favorite players of all time, is also here. And he's gone through different stages of hairstyles. He's had short hair and he's had long hair. So I picked Paul Posluszny for this player. And then Chris Claiborne, another USC guy, I think. He's here. So I know a couple of these guys you're probably not going to be familiar with right off the bat, but I had so many different websites pulled up of different players across history, trying to match these players as close as possible to what these in-game things look like. So I tried my best. And then the corners. We don't have a bunch of them. We have Fred Smoot. Doesn't really look like Fred Smoot. Jason Sehorn, which you could make an argument for that. Kyle Wilson. This is the one. This one and what's the other one? Oh, the beard one for DeAndre Levy. This one and the DeAndre Levy one were the ones I took the longest on trying to compare, because there's absolutely no NFL player that looks like this, or past or present, that looks like this player right here. So I was trying to figure out as close as I can get, and I pulled up Kyle Wilson from Boise State, and I was like, he doesn't look like him, but this guy's got longer hair. Kyle Wilson obviously had long hair. We can convince ourselves that it could be. It was a tough one. It was a real tough. That was the toughest one. Dustin Fox from Ohio State, so another Buckeye makes the team. But this is the problem that I wanted to talk about. and we'll talk about it again with the safeties as well. There's a boom period in both in the game and in with the recruiting logic or with the AI generation and with real life, where white guys are playing DB more, playing corner more often. And that's not really a thing for most of football history. Usually the white guys, if they wanted to play DB, they were safeties. But now white guys are playing corner a little bit more. Obviously, Cooper DeJean. You just had Riley Moss get an interception in real life a couple of weeks ago, or maybe last week for the Broncos. So white people are starting to play a corner a little bit more, and it's kind of annoying because in history of the NFL, there's not a lot to compare that or to match that to. So I really had to go deep into the files to remember about Dustin Fox to pull him out. And I know his hair's darker in real life. I'm working with what I got. I'm working with white corners. What do you want me to do? That's why we're probably going to be strictly non-white for the cornerback position and probably for the DB position in general for the safeties and the corners, because there's so much more options with black players playing corner than there is white guys. So that's one of the big problems I had to deal with. Eric Reed is also our final corner. Yes, it doesn't look like Eric Reed, but he had a ponytail, and Eric Reed at one time had like longer hair. So I was like, square, triangle, works together. Works enough. So those are our corners. Safeties, Jim Leonard, who I think is the head coach of somewhere, or maybe on the staff at Wisconsin. I don't know if he might be the defensive coordinator at Wisconsin. I don't think he's the head coach. Maybe he was like the interim head coach at one time. I don't know. But he played for Wisconsin, and he played safety. So he's here because it's a white safety. Kenny Phillips is also here. He could have played corner, but I made him a safety. Ashton Davis, another white safety. They're really stretching me thin. And Tom Zbikowski. Yes, that's an Asian man. But there's no Asian players in the NFL, or past or present. Or at least a corner. I shouldn't say that there are Asian players, or maybe they're not. I don't even know. But there's no person that has ever played football looks like that. So I picked Tom Zbikowski because he has kind of like a generic face, and I put it on this guy because I didn't have any other choices. It was tough. It was tough to try to figure out who to match that to. So I picked Tom Zbikowski. And it's another not black guy, so I don't know what you want me to do. It's easier because there's so much more options. But this one was tricky. And then safety, or strong safety, we have Craig Stelz, who has super long hair in real life. Doesn't have it in here because he's a white guy. So I had to make him something. But he's only a senior. He's a senior already, so he's not going to be here very long. And then we have one of my favorite ones. We have Ed Reed, because I saw this guy, and I was like, I kind of want to make him Ed Reed. And look at the pads. You know he's a big-time baller. He's got pads like that. So I looked at this guy, and I was like, I want to make him Ed Reed. I can get there, so I made him Ed Reed. And then we have Night Train Lane, who I thought would be fun. And then we have Steve Atwater, who I know is a little bit darker, but Steve Atwater, maybe he stayed in the shade for a little bit. He lost a little melanin. I don't know. That's Steve Atwater. Then the kicker and the punter were the most annoying thing ever because it's a black kicker and a black punter. And there are not a lot of options when it comes to black kickers and black punters in football. You don't usually see that. So you're seeing it more often, which is amazing. But in the past, you didn't see that very often. So when I have a black kicker and a black punter that they give me, I got to go deep into the history books to try to find somebody to match it. So I found this guy named Cedric Oglesby. He was apparently one of the first ever black kickers in the NFL. And I was like, let's make him that. And then I found the punter, Greg Coleman, who is, I think, for the Vikings back in like the 70s or something. He was also one of the first ever black punters in football. And he was also named on the all African American team that some guy had put together. So I was like, if he made it on that team, he must be solid enough. So I put him on here because I didn't have any other options. I could have went Percy Harvin, but that don't look like Percy Harvin. So that is I didn't have very many options. My options were limited. But that is the entire first year team for the All-American Dynasty. Part 2. Or version 2, I guess I should say. Version 2 of the All-American Dynasty. And let's get into what will probably be the final thing of this episode, the initial episode, which is recruiting. As you can see, I've already done a little bit of recruiting. But let's meet some of the guys that I kind of have a vision for. So every year, I'm going to go after the number one player, no matter what they look like. We're just going to have to make something. We're just going to have to make them look like somebody. So the number one player this year happened to be a quarterback, and he happens to not really look like anybody, which is very annoying because now we're going to have to match, if we get him, we're going to have to match him into somebody. And as you can see in the top, I only had 800 hours because you saw the records of the Buckeyes the previous years. They dropped a whole star, so they don't have a lot of recruiting hours as much as they would. So it's even more tricky now. But we've got this guy. And like I said, star ratings don't necessarily matter. Their their scouting ratings have no bearing at all. Their abilities do, because you can't change abilities, and their mentals. But this dude has 92 throw power, 84 speed, 89 acceleration. Literally does not matter because we're going to turn him into somebody else. So he's going to have whatever that person has. So if we turn this guy into Cam Newton, just the first guy I thought of, he's not going to look like that. Cam Newton's going to have more strength. He's going to have more arm power. He's going to have everything. If we turn him into Lamar Jackson, he's going to have more speed. So he's not. Those don't matter at all. We've also got this guy who probably isn't going to end up being a quarterback for us because I feel like I could make him look like somebody else. We've got this dude, and then this guy. This guy I'm going after heavy, as you can see by I put 50 points on him. Because I think I can make him RG3. Could you get with me on that? Could you, in theory, think that this guy would be RG3? I can get there. And that's why he's a 3-star athlete scrambler. And I think athletes are going to be the important part of a recruiting class like this because obviously athletes aren't bound to one position. So you can kind of, in theory, make them whoever you want. It's a little bit easier instead of having an actual guy who's stuck at this position. But I can get there with RG3. I can get there. So that's why I'm going heavy on him. Running backs, we don't have a bunch. We have this dude and this dude who I can, in theory, not even see either of them play running back. They could be moved to different positions as they could look like somebody else. But this guy's got longer hair, so opens up more options. At wide receiver, we only have 3, and we have a couple white guys, and then this dude. So, not giving me a lot of options. I was looking for a Randy Moss, but I couldn't find anybody that resembled Randy Moss at any point. Tight ends, we have 3 of them. This dude, I put this guy on the list. I'm not going after him. Who does he look like to you? I feel like he looks like somebody. He looks like somebody that I could make him. But I don't know for sure. If he had slightly shorter hair and a little bit darker skin, he could be Tony Gonzalez. But he can't be. It doesn't look like Tony Gonzalez. So we're going to have to... Who knows if we might not even get him. Notre Dame might get him, but I just have him on the list anyway. But these 2 guys I feel like we can make look like people. So that's why I have them on the list. Offensive line, we definitely need offensive line because a lot of our offensive line are graduating. So we have these 2 guys. We have these 3 guys. These guys almost have the exact same face, which was kind of weird. That's why I kept them on here because they look very, very similar. And then this guy. Then we have the centers. We have a couple of different center options here. We have this dude who I think, oh, yes, it is. Okay. So this guy, roll with me here. Do you think this guy could be turned into Orlando Pace? Do we think that we could get there on Orlando Pace? Because I really wanted Orlando Pace on this team in the future, but I couldn't make it work with the guys that I was given to start with. So I had to go through the recruiting class, and I tried to find guys that had that kind of round, chubby face, because Orlando Pace is a pretty iconic figure. He has a pretty distinguishable face. If you saw a picture of him, you know, oh, that's Orlando Pace. So I kind of had to find a guy, and there's not many recruits that were generated with a chubbier type of face until I found this guy. So can we get there with Orlando Pace? I feel like we can, I guess we'll find out if we actually get him. But he's only a 2-star, and we put 50 hours on him, so I'm assuming we're going to get him pretty easily. And then these other guys, we can make them pretty easily look like people. Defensive ends, we're going after one of them. We just didn't have the hours. I only had 800 hours to work with. And as you saw, I put 50 hours on a bunch of different people. So it's going to be tricky to get some of these other guys. Defensive tackles, we've got these 4 guys in here. They could look like people if you really think hard about it. We've got Kevin Roundtree, who doesn't really like anybody. No middle linebackers. We had one corner, Marquez Witherspoon. But it didn't look. I put 25 hours on it. I don't know if we'll get in on the race or not. And that is everybody that I have on the recruiting board so far. As you can see, I don't have it fully scouted or fully filled out because I had to take some guys off when I simulated from week 0 to week 1. They locked me out, so I had to take some guys off. But that is where we sit as far as week 1 in recruiting. Now, like I've been saying this entire time, it's very, very reliant on getting as close as possible to making them look like the actual player. Now, obviously, they're not going to look like the player because, 1, that's just not how the auto-generated AI thing works, and 2, we know what these players look like in our mind, and so when we see a player, a face, and that's not the player, then we just automatically like, that's not who that is. So you're going to have a little bit of an imagination, a little bit of a bigger imagination than you might normally for a series like this. But I think this series has good potential. I really, really do. We're obviously going to be playing on Heisman difficulty like we do with every series I have. And we are going to run through this schedule. I haven't fully decided if I want to do a full season in a video. Because 1, that'd take a while to do. And 2, I kind of want to put a focus on these players so that we can have connections to the freshmen. Like we can have connections to Ed Reed and to who else do we have on here that's a freshman? Deshaun Kaiser and Donovan McNabb, or Colt Brennan as a freshman redshirt, or Jonathan Stewart, or some of the incoming recruits that we get in the future. Like I want to have, I think I'm going to go game by game, or maybe double headers like I do with Hawaii and Golden Broncos. I might do that. But I feel like I want to do it a little bit more in depth so that we can kind of get to know the players more than we would if we just simulated a whole season and then went and cherry picked a few games and went in and saw them. So I know this series is kind of out there. It's a lot more out there than the original version of this series was, because in that series you could have full customization of what those players look like. So it made it a little bit more reasonable to think about that player. Like, obviously we know what Johnny Manziel looks like. He looked nothing like the player generated face that NCAA 14 I had him as. But it was more acceptable for that to look like that because because the game options were what they were. But since I can't change the player in this game, I have to just specifically pick out the players in the recruiting class that kind of in a small 1% way resemble a specific player. It's going to make it a little bit more tricky. But I also think it's going to make it a little bit more fun because it engages you guys. Because like I said, if you see a player that you think looks like somebody, you can leave them down below in the comments. And I probably will end up making that player because, well, I'm not going to know who it is. I'm not going to have, it's going to make it harder for me to try to figure out who this player looks like. So if you guys think you see somebody that looks like a specific player in your mind, then leave them down below in the comments and we can certainly add them to the recruiting class as that player you think they are. But I think this series has a lot of good potential. So I'm very excited about it. I know it was a lot of rambling, a lot of talking, but that's what I wanted this video to be. I wanted this video to be an introduction, an explanation of my thoughts and the process that went in on it, like behind this, creating this series and creating this team and picking those certain players and all that kind of stuff. So it's basically just a big information dump and explanation for this first episode. The next episode will be less going over everything and more on the field commentary talking and actually playing Gonzaga and playing North Dakota State and playing UCLA and Alabama and all these teams that we have on our schedule. So it's going to be pretty fun. And I didn't even mention this, another big reason why I picked Ohio State, not just because they're my favorite team, but because we can see the progression of how these players are playing via the Buckeye leaves. The stickers on the helmet will get added incrementally throughout the season, depending on how good the players are playing. So by the end of the year, by the game, if Joey Harrington's playing amazing, he's going to have a full helmet of Buckeye stickers. If he's not playing well, he's going to have a half a helmet of Buckeye stickers. So that's one of the other reasons why I wanted to play with the Buckeyes, is because we can get to see the sticker progression of these players. So let me know what you think down below in the comments. If you are on board with this series, if you have any thoughts that could maybe improve this series, and if you see any recruits that you think look like a certain player. I'm excited for this. I really have been working for a long time to try to get this to work, and this is as close as I'm going to get it. Unless in the next game in College Football 26, they change it to where you're able to fully customize the auto-generated rookies or auto-generated recruits, then maybe we come back to this series in College Football 26 and we make it even better, a little bit more customizable. So let me know what you think. Thank you so much for stopping by and watching. I truly appreciate it. Leave a like, subscribe to the channel if you enjoyed, join the Juice Club, and I will catch you guys in the next one. Peace.